Hot?
All right, everyone, we've reached the magic hour of 1 o'clock. I will now call to order the Council Policies and Priorities Committee regular meeting to order at 1 o'clock. And per our agenda, item 1A, I will ask for any added items at this time. Seeing none, I will ask for a motion then, item 1B, to adopt the agenda. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I move that we adopt the agenda for Council Policies and Priorities meeting for, as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. I will now call for the vote. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I will now look for a motion under item 2 on our agenda, if you're following along. Adoption of the previous minutes. And then Mayor Dahl.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll move back. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I so move that council accept the minutes as presented for December 5th, 2022 as presented.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And at this point, I will call for the vote. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 3 on the agenda, business arising out of the minutes. I don't believe there is anything. So we will now progress to item 4, presentations and delegations. And we have in attendance, our gallery is overflowing today, which is great. And starting us off, item 4A is the Youth Advisory Committee and Acting CEO Linderman, who will do the honors of presenting the committee.
We have our community facilitator, Gary Godet, will come up to the podium here.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Today I'm pleased and very honored to introduce our Youth Advisory Council. The council, we put together, council, I guess, was mid-October, and we had 11 enthusiastic, energetic kids, or youth, young adults, come forward. And today we have 6 of the 11 that are here. I'll name off the 11 that we do have. We have Asa Corver, Colvin Hallett, Davina Merritt, Haley Hronick, Holden Murray, Julia Roca, Kiara Lewis, Nicole Zambule, Sarah Person, Scott Blakely, and Scout Nelson. So I have 6 of them that are here today, and they're going to do a little presentation to you about all the things that they've been doing and what they plan on doing.
Thank you, Gary, and again, welcome to the committee and the 6 that are here, and look forward to hearing from you folks.
Okay. Gary kind of stole my introductions. I'm Davina, and I'm just going to talk about a little bit about the Advisory Council. Do I press that one? Okay. So we are a group of 12 members, and our ages are from 15 to 20. We have representatives from the high school, the college, and the community, and our first meeting took place in September. And this photo that you can see is from our first activity during Midnight Madness in town. And what we had community members come and vote on a logo that we were going to have on our hoodies. So, as you can see.
Nice.
Hi, my name's Holden Murray. I
am here to talk about the purposes of the Youth Advisory Council. Our purpose is to activate the youth of Olds. Purposes for activities for ages from 14 to 24 to connect and engage this age group, and to communicate the rising issues with the youth with the town council as you guys. Thank you.
So I'm Kiera, and here are all of our accomplishments. So we handed out popcorn and hot chocolate at Midnight Madness, along with getting votes on our logos. We helped out with Skating with Santa, handing out cookies and hot chocolate again. We helped out with the holiday train with handing out the same cookies and hot chocolate. We helped out with the Santa Claus parade. We also have developed our own Instagram, and we cleaned up and got to know some of the seniors at the Evergreen Center.
I'm Aza Corver, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about our future goals. So one of our goals is to have more involvement with the seniors. We're not totally sure what that's going to look like yet. We've discussed maybe dance nights or game nights with the seniors. As well, we're hoping to do a teen skate night at the new skating rink that's in Centennial Park. We're going to discuss that in our meeting tonight, and we're hoping to do that within the next few weeks. And as well, we hope to be highly involved with the youth center and the development of that. So moving into the importance of the youth center, we feel that it'll create a safe space for youth to hang out. As well, it'll connect youth together with each other and adult figures, and provide youth accessibility to services. As well, we recognize that there's not much of a place in Olds for teens to kind of hang out in the evening when they've got nothing to do. So we're hoping that that can be a place where teens can go.
Hi, my name is Colvin Hallett, and I'm going to talk about our future plans. Some of the things we plan for our big youth week include a teen swim night at the local aquatic center, a drive-in movie, depending on the funding, of course, involvement with local businesses all around to get them included in the youth space, and youth bowling night. Other things that extend outside of the youth week include like a teen skating night on the new rink recently built, a color run, so lots of fun there. Seniors dance, and so we could connect to our seniors more, just like the Evergreen cleaning, and roller rink just in case the skating, works out in the summer. Thank you for having our time, and we'd be honored if you'd take a picture with us.
We'd be honored.
Okay,
Thank you kindly.
No, great, and thank you guys very much for your time, not only today, but through the initiation of the Youth Advisory Committee and the activities that you've been part of. And I will open it up to the floor before we do the photo op. Open it up to the floor if anybody has any questions of the 6 members that are here, committee members. Go ahead, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I just want to commend you young folks on your initiative today. This is excellent.
Thank you kindly. Means a lot.
Councillor Ryan, and then Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and I also want to thank you very much for coming out and being at council, making the presentation today. It looks like you guys have got off to a really good start. Look forward to seeing some involvement in some of the other events that the town runs or that are run in the town, like Canada Day. I see that you had some participation in the Old Fashioned Christmas, and that always needs volunteer help, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Mayor Dahl?
Again, I'd like to add as well, you all presented very well. I appreciate that. I see that you've got some engagement with the seniors coming up in the future. That sounds very exciting as well. And your Youth Week in May, I look forward to coming to visit you then as well. The community should be very proud of you. Thank you for being here.
If there are no other questions, we can certainly take a brief moment to have the photo op. My only comment would be, I fully endorse the color run. My only comment would be, I fully endorse the color run, and I will pay money to see some of our administrative people, like our legislative clerk and Mr. Gadet and a few others involved in the color run, so fully endorse it. And I do have,
Council, too.
well, yeah, especially Councillor Daly. And I do have a question. What's the time commitment? You mentioned the committee is formed in September. I can appreciate it's variable given events that are going on, but what is generally the time commitment? How often do you meet and that sort of thing?
So originally it was supposed to be 2 meetings a month, but we have more likely done it around 3 to 4 depending on what's going on. There has been months where we've only met once, but including events and meetings, I'd say probably at least 5 hours a month.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. And just a quick question for the group. Are you looking to add on more youth to the organization? I know you said you had 12 members. Is there a magic number that you want to get to, or, and are you still accepting people to join?
So right now, there's 11. There's 11 members. And, we're hoping to get 12 to 14 would be an ideal number. But 11 works great right now.
I also just wanted to quickly add for council that these guys, some of their funding comes from FCSS, like Gary had mentioned, and it's a good partnership that they're developing between themselves and the Boys and Girls Club. Letitia is here from the Boys and Girls Club to support these guys today, and they're working hard together to try to get that youth center off the ground. So I just wanted to point out that this is one of those areas that we saw that there was a need in our community, and we were able to partner some groups together to work. Sorry, well, that was embarrassing. To work together to work towards getting this final end result. So, and if you ever get a chance to see these guys when they're out doing some volunteering, chat with them. They're all very interesting and have a lot to offer to our community. So we just really appreciate them.
Yes, we do.
No, once again, yeah, great. I echo all the sentiments and comments. It's a great initiative. Thanks again to you guys for your time. Thanks to our town administration and the CS side of the organization for their involvement. And going forward, if there's anything that council can do to help enable your group, certainly work through your contacts, Gary and so on, Heather, and let us know. And if there's anything we can do, we'll certainly entertain it. So, and with that, unless there are any further questions, we'll assemble over in the back, Marcy, for a quick photo op.
Would it be too bright?
All right, continuing on with our agenda. Oh, sorry, yes, thank you. I will now accept a motion for the Youth Advisory Committee in their report. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I move that we accept the presentation from the Youth Advisory Committee for information and thank them for their hard work in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daly, and I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Carried unanimously. So with that, we will proceed with the RCMP quarterly report. Acting CEO Linderman.
We have Staff Sergeant Wright here to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and Administration. Good afternoon. Today, I'd like to present my quarterly report for Quarter 3 of the 2022-2023 year for our detachment. And this is specifically for October 1st to December 31st of 2022. In your package, there is a letter addressed to Mayor Judy Dahl with respect to, and please bear with me. As soon as I find it, I can speak to it. There it is. Again, these letters, although my signature's on them, they come out of K Division. And this one in particular speaks to some changes that are coming about with our operational comm center and Next Generation 911. And if you kind of had a chance to look over them, basically the CRTC mandated that we upgrade our technology. And just to briefly summarize, in 2023, the top priority for Alberta RCMP remains safety and security of all Albertans. And this letter and attached indexes or appendixes speak to the updates on our Next Generation 911 or NG 911 upgrades and our operational communication centers. And the RCMP provides response to police emergencies and routine calls for service to approximately 1.3 million citizens in Alberta, including 22 First Nations communities. The OCC police dispatch and call taking services support 117 RCMP detachments and other several contracted or integrated units. And our call-taking services serves as a secondary public safety answering point for Alberta's 911 system. So when people say, we're going to call 911, that's not actually an RCMP operated system. It's separate. And then if it is a police emergency, because they'll say, do you need fire, ambulance, police? And they say police, then they flip it from 911 call center to our call centers. There's 2 call centers located in the province, one for the northern part of the province, which is in Edmonton, one for the southern part of the province, which is in Red Deer. So that is that. I don't present myself as an expert to the contents of this per se in terms of the information that's related to these upgrades. I just know, like you, that they're coming. The report I have next is just my standard report that maybe you had a chance to speak to, and I'll just highlight but not read from. For this past quarter of crime reduction, we had 6 habitual offenders residing in the town limits of Olds, of which 18 curfew checks were conducted on them. We've had quite a bit of success in checking on these folks and breaching where they are in contravention of their order. For drug searches and drugs offenses, unfortunately, we didn't have anything on the go for those 3 months, but I can speak to something that happened last week, and I'm kind of encroaching into my quarter 4 report that you're going to hear in 3 months. But last week, we successfully executed a search warrant in the town of Olds and town of Bowden that were related to one particular resident, which involved, he was charged with 10 criminal and drug offenses. We seized, I don't have the exact quantities at this time, but we seized approximately 60 grams of fentanyl. We seized cocaine, crack cocaine, methamphetamine, ecstasy, I think, acid, marijuana, several shotguns, a taser, and some concealed knives. So those are all in our care now. That person's been arrested and through process has been released for court in March. So there'll be a more detailed news release with a photograph that's coming out later this afternoon. So Doug, you'll have that. In terms of community engagement and visibility, I mean, again, as per the report, we've been out there fairly present within the community. We recently had our town halls, which are again next quarter, but we had 3 town halls in a row. Mountain View County, the town of Bowden, town of Bowles, very, very successful. Received lots of good feedback, lots of conversations over the period. Very well, I mean, you always wish that they're a little bit better attended, but I was very happy with the turnout that we had in Wolves. Mental health and domestic violence, I brought in the RPAC team, which is the Regional Police and Crisis Team. So they're a combination of a regular RCMP member with a psychiatric nurse from Alberta Health Services, and they're like a team, and they drive around to calls or in their office, and they support detachments within their area. This particular RPAC group is out of Cochrane, and they have been up to the Olds area several times, and I was able to get them to speak to local Alberta Health Services practitioners at an interagency conference at the provincial building. So just to get everybody on the same page that these services are available to support us when we are being called to assist with people in mental health crisis. In the month of March, we have a domestic violence workshop planned with the victim services and emergency shelter. I believe it's going to be at the Elks Hall, but I still don't have an exact date in March. But I'll let everybody know when it does happen. And coming from the town halls, there was definitely interest generated for a fraud presentation or fraud prevention presentation that we're planning on doing in May, also within the town itself. And it's open to everybody, but we're specifically trying to target seniors who appear to be most vulnerable. Next page is stats. Fairly stable and consistent, I'd say. With regards to our staffing, as of last quarter, we had all of our municipal police officers accounted for, but one of our municipal employees was absent. And of course, we've successfully converted all municipal employees to public servants now, federal public servants. They've signed their letters of offer, and their first official day is February 13th. So completely federal support now. Next page, in terms of our budget, just a breakdown. We are completely on par for third quarter in terms of our expenditures under our municipal budget. Yeah, we're as close as we can be to what our third quarter should be. Is there any questions arising from the report?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I have one question with regards to the letter and the upgrade to the 911 system, and that was just for budgeting purposes. Is there any of this cost for the upgrade that will filter down to the municipality, or is this being handled at the federal level?
That's a really good question that I don't have an answer to. They didn't tell me. Just, if I may. The director will speak to that question. I believe he has a little bit more information concerning the finances.
Thank you. Just to discuss the NG 911 service, so that is an initiative going through that we've been dealing with through our 911 contract provider, which is Red Deer Emergency Communications Center. And so all of the fees and the costs associated actually come onto user fee. So your monthly bill from your phone provider, you'll see those costs added as a 1 or 2 cent increase, or I don't even know what the rate is, but there is no direct cost related to the municipality to cover that. And so that process is well underway in our region, and the RCMP are obviously vital to that, so, yeah.
Thank you. In terms of the the municipal stats on the sheet here, just going through again, I mean, quarter to quarter, things are relatively stable. There's some increases, but mostly, I would say mostly things are stable or decreasing. We're not talking any extreme jump on numbers in any particular category or anything that I typically reviewed, other than, like I said, of late, we are certainly increasing our drug enforcement in the town. The only other thing I'd like to say, in addition to this, is now that you have a youth advisory committee, I would be wanting an opportunity to work with them. I definitely see a connection that we can make in terms of enforcement with them, because they may have some ideas that I simply don't. So I'm looking forward to being invited to a meeting. That would be great. Fantastic. Other than that, yeah, it was a bit of a slow quarter, but I can tell you the fourth quarter is going to go out with a bang. So we're pretty happy with the way things are going. And also, lastly, I did send out a letter right here requesting that you consider your priorities for the next fiscal year, commencing in April. So.
Go ahead, Mayor Dahl.
Thank you for your report and your letter. Are there anything that you can recommend? Is there an area you could recommend that you may want to add as a fourth area or addition?
Absolutely. Thank you. So on the letter itself, I spoke to what was brought forward last year in terms of crime reduction, community engagement, visibility, mental health, and domestic violence. If I was to suggest a fourth, it would be traffic enforcement prevention. So anything to do with traffic. Now that we actually have a community resource officer in place effective March 6th, it is our intention to work very closely with municipal enforcement, and part of those responsibilities, of course, actually most of the community resource officers' responsibilities are to address these town priorities. And so if you put traffic on there, whether you do or you don't, he's still going to do some traffic, but it is a suggestion.
I will open it up to any other questions from council for Staff Sergeant Wright. And while people contemplate that, I do have a question or two. One ties in related to the priorities from the town halls. You mentioned there was the county, Bowden, and certainly Olds. What was hot on the topic there from the town halls? You mentioned fraud and fraud prevention. Was there anything else?
Well, a theme with all three was property crime, whether it was theft from people's yards, theft of gasoline. In Bowden's case, there was some isolated instance where people were taking drills and drilling gas tanks and letting it drip into a jerry can. We haven't seen that here in Olds. But I certainly think property crime does dovetail into crime prevention. And typically, the other thing of concern that's been brought forward is car prowlings, which is people that are going through neighborhoods at night and checking unlocked vehicles. We recently had a project Cold Start, which is similar, which just ran last week with respect to our officers going out in the morning and checking vehicles that are running in people's driveways and on the street to see who left their vehicle unlocked. And I can say, because Doug asked me, that it was approximately 41 vehicles were checked, and of which 25% were unlocked, so it's about 11. And that's between both Olds and Bowden. So to get people to lock their vehicles is the first step in terms of theft prevention, because we don't find any cases where thieves are actually breaking windows or breaking locks or breaking doors to get into these vehicles. They're simply just opening the door, right? So Those were common that were brought forward in terms of just those minor thefts and what to do. We talked about crime prevention by environmental design, but the best thing to do is lock your stuff up if you can. So, and again, going into the crime prevention part, when we look at activities for crime prevention, we talk about identifying our prolific offenders and sort of just keeping that constant contact with them, especially if they're on conditions, as well as we do warrant roundups where we, we'll set aside 2 night shifts or something like that, and we'll have lists of warrants, and we just pick those people up and most cases release them, but some don't get released right away. So education is huge. I think generally people lock up their vehicles and homes a lot more than they used to. Certainly people have invested in doorbell cameras, and we are still looking at a registry for doorbell cameras for residences and businesses in town so that we know who's got them, and we can certainly contact them if we've had a crime in the area, and we can see if anybody's got anything on film.
Thank you for that. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. For Staff Sergeant, can you give us an update on the catalytic converter thefts? Is it going up? Is it going down? I've heard of a few establishments that have been raided, searched, found the property on there, not here but in bigger centers. I'm just wondering, has that curbed it any, or are we still experiencing kind of the same numbers we did a year ago?
To be honest with you, I don't think they're as common in the town of Olds as people think they are. Certainly, does it happen? Yes, it does, and it tends to happen in waves. But I wouldn't say it's an epidemic by any stretch of the imagination. It does happen. There have been some programs that have come out where people are now stamping. They have to get it professionally done, but somehow stamping their catalytic converters with an ID code. And so if these things are removed and cut off your vehicle and brought to a recycler, the recycler is supposed to do their due diligence and check those numbers to see if they're listed on the site, and and if so, then they contact the police. We haven't really experienced any of that, but in general, to answer your question, it's there, but it's not either reported. It may be underreported, but it's certainly not common.
Are there any other further questions before I ask one more? Okay, I'll let you guys marinate on that. I will ask then. Somewhat concerning is these drug seizures and firearms and so on. That's like 2 of what seems to be fairly major incidents in Olds in the past, 3 months or less. I'm trying to think of the other one that was announced late in 2022. Any thoughts, comments?
Well, I think that Olds is no different than any other community in central southern Alberta concerning how much drugs is in the community. But what happens is if we have the right combination of staff and they're incredibly motivated and driven, we certainly start opening these investigations, and they're coming to positive conclusions. And so we did have a few new members come in this past summer, and they've been working very, very hard on these projects. And I've been encouraging them the entire time, and so now we're seeing the outcome of those efforts. So I think we'll continue in this direction, and there may be more to come. But certainly it's all in an effort to bring a conclusion to their activities and make Olds a safer place.
No, thank you for that, and maybe it's perhaps, again, just the proverbial tip of the iceberg in terms of capture and seizure and what still remains out there, so, okay. And I do like your comment relative to leveraging the Youth Advisory Council or Committee. We have still a couple members here, so I think that's great, an excellent idea, and obviously between yourselves and Paul and the committee and our town administration and look to see what can move forward in that area. I think that's a great opportunity, so.
Well, I certainly didn't mean to steal Paul's thunder, because we were talking about it as they were up here, and we were going like, yes, we definitely need to speak to them about 1, 2, 3 matters, right? And so I think he's going to elaborate on that, but I certainly wanted to put my 25 cents in and say I'd like to also have access to speak with them.
Yeah, no, for sure. And with that, one last call. Are there any other questions for Staff Sergeant Wright? Seeing none, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Ryan.
I'll make a motion if you're.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I move the council accepts the Olds RCMP third quarter report as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. And with that, I will ask for the vote. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Is there any further update coming from on the municipal side, or is that it? Paul? No. Oh, okay. Oh, just wanted to confirm. With that, we'll go on to 5B and
I will ask Director Greco to present the operational update.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you pulling it up? Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, to start off our operational update for the quarter, the first picture we have here are a few pictures from the outdoor skating rink. This is a much anticipated amenity that has recently been put together by our operational staff and contractors. A special kudos goes out to the park staff who have recently put the ice in with some help from the weather recently, as well as Sportsplex staff, and a special honorable mention to Brian Powell and No Surrender. The picture on the right-hand side is of a ice flutter that Brian Powell had rigged up for us. This unit has been extremely beneficial. The town's never had an outdoor ice rink, so we're trying to navigate the best way to flood the rink and utilize that facility. So again, a special kudos goes out to Mr. Powell and No Surrender. Let's hope that the weather accommodates the facility so we can handle it in the coming month. To cover off, the rest of that project is not quite complete. We will be doing pickleball acid etch line painting for use during the summer season. So that project will finish off in the spring. Other completed projects within the town since the last update is we completed our wayfinding signage, including our civic identifier at the library. And 2 other locations are the eastbound highway sign at 27 and 65th, and the other one is in the westbound lane at Highway 27 and 65th. We also switched out our residential bins throughout the community, so we had moved from one vendor to another. We completed that switch out right before Christmas, so a lot of our town facilities and our residential bins have been replaced with the new vendor. Moving on to ongoing projects. Last I reported out, we still have the top lift of asphalt to complete, along with the post and cable at the service road behind Circle K there. And we will also be completing the line painting when the weather permits on 50th Ave. The recruitment for the manager of operations is going good. We have some good candidates, and we're hoping to fill that position this month very shortly. Moving on, another ongoing project. Right now in the community, we have a significant water loss leak within the town. We're getting hit at both ends on this with this respect to this leak. We've already repaired 3 major leaks on this infrastructure in town. We're hoping that we don't have too many more to complete the repairs where this leak is happening. So the pictures that we're looking at here are an actual picture of down in the manhole. So the water leak is so big that we're getting it enter into through infiltration through our wastewater system. And so the sooner we rectify this, the better. It is going to take some time as there are numerous leaks. So we've already repaired 3. Our crews have been very busy working with contractors on the leaks and trying to get ahead of this. So that's keeping us busy on utilities. Just at a glance in 2023, some areas of focus. We've got a line painter that we're hoping to do line painting more efficiently in the spring. We're getting ahead of these projects, and the other is the operation center paving. We'll be putting out tenders for that, as well a snow management system for the operation center. The MIP project for Phase 2 of 52nd Street will be going out for tender by the end of this month. So we're trying to get these tenders out sooner rather than later, and hoping to have a competitive process with respect to that. If money permits, we have enough money within our MIP project. We hope to do some asphalt removal base repair on 65th Ave. The other project that will be going out for tender is our robotic rover, which is essentially a sewer camera. Again, with the wastewater issues that we're having with this significant leak, it's going to be good to have an updated camera to give us this data and for troubleshooting other areas within our community. Next. So the following slide, this is a quick outline of our wastewater reduction program. So just to give some background, in 2017, a wastewater report was completed by Al Turner Consulting. And the report had identified a number of recommendations within the report to address the town's concerns with water loss and inflow and infiltration costs. The average water loss for the town is since 2017, it's roughly around 27%, and has been increasing in recent years as per the chart. The water loss obviously affects local residents and businesses and accounts for approximately $500,000 in uncaptured costs. The second chart on the slide is a chart that shows our inflow and infiltration costs, another significant cost to the town's residents, as shown in the chart. The average annual loss is 40%, with a significant increase in 2022. Inflow and infiltration vary year to year based on the annual rainfall. While our programs like sewer relining and replacement have been occurring, existing infrastructure continues to age and deteriorate. Between water loss and infiltration, the town of Olds is realizing almost $1.5 million annually in unbilled expenses. So obviously this is a considerable financial liability to the town, and one of the areas of focus in 2023 is to tackle this, and we feel confident in a plan. If we could fast forward to the next slide. So the next slide will cover our projects that we're going to be handling this water loss and wastewater plan. So the first in Phase 1 in 2023, we're going to increase the number of meters that we do sewer relining. So this year, we're anticipating to do approximately 2,800 meters. The second project is the complete lining and refurbishment of 15 manholes. We're also purchasing some technology called the smart meter. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the smart cover and just what it's designed to do for the town. In a nutshell, the smart cover is going to be, it's going to help us monitor this sewer infiltration. The water meter pilot project, we are continuing with this pilot project. We do have the tender out. There has been some significant shortfalls in product supply. So we will be putting together a new tender and tendering out by the end of the month for the water meter pilot project. The last item that we'll be tackling this year is the installation of vault meters and additional valves on property lines of developments. The installation of these vault meters at customers that use high volumes of water would have been really beneficial with this most recent leak. Again, the leak is entering into our wastewater system, so we're getting hit at both sides. So this year, it's anticipated that we'll be doing anywhere from 2 to 3, depending on how the costs come in. So the next slide is what we call a smart cover. So the picture on the right-hand side is a device that sits underneath the manhole cover. This device is capable of handling, it'll give us a baseline data of how much flow we are having in the system. We're purchasing 7 of these covers, and we'll be utilizing the covers throughout the community and moving them from location to location. So once we have that baseline, it's going to give us the data of how much inflow we have when we're not in a state of precipitation like the spring. And then when spring hits, we'll be able to overlay that data, analyze it, and understand where in the community exactly these problems are happening. So we're excited to get that going. With respect to the data, all of the data is real time. In the event we had a smart cover out near one of these major significant water leaks, we would have identified that. We would have been able to see that. So the next year is obviously our priorities are going to be water loss and wastewater infiltration. That's all I have. I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Director Greco, and yes, for that report, and I'll throw it open to questions from council at this time. Mayor Dahl?
Thank you for your explanation with regards to the smart cover system and data in real time. So could you explain a little further how, so you did say that we were going to be able to know when and where the water loss is. Is that what you mean by data in real time? We could catch that instead of losing $1.5 million in water loss?
That's correct. It's not a silver bullet, but had we had smart covers monitoring the flow, we actually discovered this leak by popping the manhole cover off. We could see infiltration because there were a number of problems in this specific area in the community. But one of these monitors would have identified it immediately. We would have seen the trend line up in our wastewater system. The other important thing about the smart cover and the data that we'll get is in our plan to rectify and prioritize wastewater, it's also important that we don't invest money where it's not necessarily needed. So when we're going out for MIP projects, it's important that we put the dollars to use where we're getting those dollars and making sure that, hey, this is a problem area we need to focus on. So right now, we just simply don't have that data. So.
Are there any further questions? Oh, Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. So I'm just going to go a little bit further on this, these smart covers. You had mentioned that you would move them around to different locations. How long does it take to create that baseline that you're looking for? Do you put them in place for like 6 months, a year, 2 years, before you move them to another location? Or is it simply a matter of only needing them in for a few weeks?
We'll certainly need them more in longer than a couple of weeks. So it's anticipated, we know the areas where these manholes converge. So we'll take these converging areas where we have our system, our wastewater system flowing into a couple different areas in town. Like, we'll use that baseline data, which will take approximately 8 months to gather the data. And we might even have to probably get more data next spring as well. And we'll be able to compare this spring compared to last spring. And also, we'll be able to use our baseline data we should be able to get right away. So as soon as we install these and move them around, we'll understand what the baseline is. But it won't be until next year we'll be able to actually identify exactly where the problems are. So we're anticipating roughly 12 months.
It's a supplemental. So then, when you talk about time of the year, can these be in place for like over winter time, or do you have to take them out in the winter?
Absolutely. The product will be used 12 months a year. Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Ryan, or sorry, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Go a little further then, along with these, the purchase of these smart cover systems, do you think we are purchasing an adequate amount, or do you think we're going to need more, or should we have more?
I think because the product is versatile, we can essentially install the units under different man covers and rotate these throughout the community. Given the size of our system, we feel that 7 is ample to start this project, and we may need to reevaluate next budget cycle on whether or not we needed more. But our initial workings is that I think 7 will be sufficient to start the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Ryan.
So I'm just going to move off the smart covers and back over to the snow management system. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What is that?
So the snow management system is actually for our operations center. So we'll be installing a device that essentially blocks the snow from falling off the building and landing on some of the staff and contractors that are entering and exiting the building. So.
For the clarification, I was thinking, for some unknown reason, I was thinking about the area that we dump snow that we remove, and I know that there was, been a problem with whether or not we're filling up that area, and I thought maybe that had something to do with it. But now that you mentioned that snow management system about the roof, yeah, no, I understand what you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I just had one question, taking us back to water and water loss. So you talked about the smart covers. What other avenues could the town possibly look at? And I realize this is going to be a couple-year project, if not more. What else is available there that we can help to manage, monitor, and detect loss? I'm thinking anything at the fire hydrants. I don't know if that's an issue or not. Water mains kind of running in and out of individuals' houses. What are other potential tools that we may want to leverage going forward, providing we have funds available?
Well, with the approval of the installation of the vault meters in our major customers, so we've taken those points out of the Al Turner report back in 2017 and essentially cherry-picked the items that we feel that would give us the best value for our investment. So the vault meters are going to be a very good investment. A vault meter also would have identified a major water leak in this area, specific area as well. So that is a good one. The continuation of our MIP program, updating our system on 52nd and onwards into the future. The upgrade of those systems, wherever there's aging infrastructure, that will also help with the water loss.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the smart meters that we've been talking about for the last, I think, year and a half, 2 years, considering where this major flood that we saw the pictures of in your presentation occurred, those smart meters, if they were installed in the neighboring properties, because anecdotally we've heard residents have lost all their pressure of their water because of these leaks, those sensors would have given us an indication that there was a major water leak in the area too as well, I would assume, right?
Yeah, if residents had a specific drop in pressure, you would have been able to analyze a report that would have identified it. The other identification point is some of the residents have said, well, we notice a big pressure drop. Yeah, we know why, because there's a significant leak. But yes, the meters, the newer style meters that we would be installing, we'll be able to analyze reports and analyze whether or not there's issues within the water loss and be able to identify that. But the purpose of the vault meters is if the water loss is on our system before it is metered, that's the real issue that this most recent water leak has, is that the town's paying for it. And that's why we're trying to quickly get vault meters installed and rectify these leaks that are happening.
Thanks. I'm just having a problem with the definition of a vault meter. So I know that we have areas of the community that are not serviced by the town, say the trailer parks. They have vault meters out front on a major line, then the meters at the residency, and we compare those two numbers. Are you saying that you want to put a vault meter in a specific area of town and say this meter is a major water line going to a area of town, and then we're going to compare that meter to the meters that are being read there to determine if there's a water leak prior to the residential meters, not necessarily in one of these private property communities where we have vault meters already? Or are you saying just in the large consumer that is already metered, you want to put a meter in front of the meter? I'm a little confused with the whole idea of the vault meter outside of outside of a community like a trailer park where we don't own the water lines and the infrastructure inside the meter, and we're actually comparing or charging based on that vault meter price. So I'm a little confused at what you're talking about when a vault meter out in the community.
I'll try to summarize this as best as I can. We have areas of the community where there was no vault meter put in originally, and so if there is a leak on that system, it's not necessarily being billed out to the individual business or resident. So there's a few of these major areas that we're going to install a vault meter so we can essentially meter the business and or residential locations directly. We'd be able to know whether or not there'd be a leak on our system.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh and then Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I'm just going to refer back to the water cost comparison tables. And I find it interesting, but I feel that the total cubic meters purchased from the commissions is missing in these tables. This would be a great key performance indicator going forward if we could track it, because I know prices change over time. We can't look at prices and determine whether it's more being used or less being used, because prices tend to go up over time. But yeah, I like this, and I'd like to see this on a regular basis, but with the total cubic meters billed from each commission, just not the dollar costs, if that's possible.
Yep, for sure.
Counselor, thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and Counselor Walsh kind of took my question in that it looks like, because since I've been on council, we have been addressing some of the relining of manholes as well as sewer lines to help us with the infiltration. And I see on here that it looks like we're making ground on that. Now, is there any key performance indicators, as Councillor Walsh has indicated, that we could look for in the upcoming year with the investment that we're doing into the infrastructure now? Have you got any idea what we're looking at? Is there one major leak that we're going to find, or is there several smaller leaks that we're looking for?
I think with the installation, if we continue down the road of taking those Al Turner suggestions and recommendations and actually delivering on focusing on the sewer relining, the installation of the smart meter covers, identifying where the leaks are and where the infiltration is, the refurbishment of the manholes, and manhole relining. It's a combination of things that's going to make this problem a lot better than what it is today.
Okay. Are there any other questions around the table before we go ahead, Councillor Daly? Yep.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. The other question I have as far as your capital projects going forward, and that's phase 2 of the 52nd Street installation and utilities. I received, and I also saw on social media, a lot of people talking about how we started the project very abruptly, and they didn't have enough advance notice of the street being torn up and access to their front yards and so forth. Moving forward, I just ask that operations maybe, extend that out a bit so that our citizens do have time to move their RVs out of their front yards or their vehicles or what have you, so they can plan for this going forward. That's a comment I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to go all the way back to, what page is that? Sorry, 28 of your presentation, the Centennial Park Outdoor Rink. And the gentleman on the quad with this really groovy ice cleaning machine, ice resurfacing machine, you said that he built this himself? And when you say no surrenders, this might seem like a silly question. Is that a company, or is that just the name of his ice cleaning machine that he's invented? And is this just a really friendly citizen who's out on our skating rink cleaning, resurfacing our ice for us for fun? Or can you give us a little bit more details? Because I think this machine is absolutely fantastic. And anybody who can build that is a gadget pro, I think. You need some duct tape, but other than that, if you can give us a little bit more information about this gentleman and his machine.
I can, and what I might actually do, I might defer that to Director Andrew, as he can explain who Brian is, how he built it.
Sure. So you would recognize him as our Director of Emergency Management and Deputy Fire Chief of the Fire Department. So, he constructed the apparatus. The company No Surrender is a private venture that he's part of, doing wildland firefighting. So that's why they had the poly tank available. So there's not too many wildland fires at this time of year, so they felt it would be wisely used. So he loves to build and construct, and so that is his creation for sure. And so he loves to help out and do that. So he's been busy and his own quad there to operate it. So he's been very happy with that. So that's the background there. And he has volunteered the use of that device for this season's ice making. So, yeah.
Congratulations, Tim.
Yeah, no, it's a great innovative idea, a very basic idea, but very appropriate. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. And a little along that lines, you mentioned also in this presentation here that we would be doing etching for, in the spring and summer, on that outdoor rink for pickleball. Now, having the presentation earlier from the Youth Advisory Committee here, will that etching stand up to if they wanted to do some type of a roller rink on there, you know, that could be compatible with pickleball, or do you know this question? Because I think it's something we should possibly look at for sure.
I do know that the acid etched painting that's going to be done, that is a more permanent paint. So it would be something that we would have to work with the Youth Advisory Committee. Again, the project itself, though, to be clear, it did have provisions. Project. So we.
Great, thank you. And unless there are any other further questions, I'll ask for a motion to accept Councillor Director Greco's report. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I move that we accept the verbal update from our operations, Director of Operations as presented for information.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. And with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Sorry. Thank you for that. And as we inch along on our agenda under item 6A, bylaw and policies review, Council Policy 114C, proclamations. And again, I will turn it over to Acting CEO and our Finance Director, Lindeman, for that particular item.
Thank you. So for discussion today is our proclamations policy. Administration within this policy is recommending that the town of Olds immediately stop authorizing formal endorsements or proclamations. And the thing of note with this is that we, as the town, will still continue to promote these events that pertain to any related causes or events, or that we are directly funding. However, we are recommending not to do the proclamation that goes with it. And with that, I would just open it up for discussion.
If council has any questions, now would be an opportune time to pose them. Mayor Dahl?
Thank you. I just understand that this is without a change to our service levels. Is that correct?
Yes, there's no change to service level. It's just a change in the fact that we would not be making formal proclamations at council meetings.
Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Question to Acting CAO Lindeman. Would council still see a collective list of planned proclamations for the upcoming year? Or would they be communicated in an internal communication throughout the town of Olds and through media?
I'll take that one if that's okay. Thank you, through the chair. So the intent, I believe, is that we will not make formal proclamations by council, and that related town-sponsored municipal purposes, operations would be done through that department. For example, like WCB has the National Day of Mourning for Workers. That would come through HR and through operations. And it wouldn't be a proclamation coming to council as much as it would just be a marketing and engagement plan that they would put out there and work with communications and put it out there, that it's a municipally sponsored type event or whatever they're having, and not being proclaimed by council at that. Like there isn't a list because we're not keeping lists in that way. It would just be by department on what was warranted for their departments.
Thank you, Legislative Clerk McKinnon, and I'll turn it over to Mayor Dahl.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that this does not mean the town will not promote, advertise any specific occasions or events. We still will be doing that.
And if I may further, citizens always, community groups always have the opportunity to advertise on our community events board and our community calendar, and I believe we do that for free.
Okay, thank you. And just at the risk of further chatting about this and to the point, so can you help me understand? So February, we have Anti-Bullying Day coming up. So what does that look like? In the past, I believe council would have received and probably had a proclamation. What happens with Pink Shirt Day and Truth and Reconciliation Day in September and Green Shirt Day in April, to give 3 examples?
Nothing changes except for council is not making a formal proclamation. Staff is still doing all the same things, promoting it in public, putting the ads in if that's what they did, wearing the pink shirts, that kind of stuff.
Crystal clear, thank you. Mayor Dahl.
I think it's important to remember that we do have a new communications department staff, and it's really important to know that we still will be promoting and advertising these specific occasions and events, but in a larger and broader way. Town-related, yes, thank you. I don't think we'll lose the intent.
Are there any further questions from council before I ask for a motion? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to accept this and direct acting CEO and administration. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I move that council accept the information and direct the CAO to bring back to a future regular council meeting the policy related to this.
Thank you, Councillor Daly, and with that, I will ask for the vote, All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you all for that brief discussion. Yeah, I could leave it on except when I sneeze, I guess. And with that, we will turn to our final item under bylaws and policies review, item 6B, bylaw 2023-06, community standards bylaw. I believe this is, for those that have looked at the package, about a 40-page document. My understanding is it's not so much anything new, but it's a consolidation and amalgamation combination of 7 previously existing bylaws into a new single bylaw, and that is what council will chat about today. I would make just a few comments before I throw it open, or certainly throw it over to the acting CAO and finance director, and just to remind council that this is the first stage gate in what's going to be not a lengthy process, but future discussions to take place. This is the first part of that discussion, or the first stage gate in that process. Please keep your comments, as a reminder, concise, direct, and to the point. And if you have comments relative to punctuation and grammar and sentence structure and everything, I would ask that you summarize those in an email and send them to the legislative clerk, copy to council. And if we could focus our discussion today on getting clarity and understanding of the content and the intent of the bylaw, looking at it through that lens of clarity and making sure that it is concise, that it is understandable, certainly to the public, to the council, to the enforcement folks, and to administration. That'll help us move us along with the administration in terms of ultimately getting the bylaw approved, passed, and in place. So with that, I will turn it over to the acting CAO.
Thank you, and I will ask Director Andrew to speak to this item.
Thank you. Through to the chair. The first process in a long, arduous task of revising and reviewing bylaws and ensuring that they're appropriate for today's day and age and the needs of the community. It takes a in-depth look at what we have and where we've come from. And so the CSB has not had major revision since its institution. And as you can see there with the 7 amendments that have been put forward with that CSB, every time that there's an amendment added, it creates another layer of confusion and or difficulty in navigating. And so we looked at this with the hiring of our senior peace officer, Mr. Wright, to start to try to figure out where we need to be and the issues that we were seeing concurrently happening, where we were constantly facing situations where our bylaw was unclear or the penalties were not specified or were out of touch with, you know, what the intent of the bylaws are. And so the first step that we wanted to take was to take a quick look at the CSB as a whole, bring it into one document, so hence why we're proposing to consolidate it into one bylaw for ease of navigation for officers, administration, and the public. The next stage in this process will be to dissect and look at the content within. And what we are looking to propose in the future, not today, is that we would look to build specific bylaws surrounding traffic enforcement, animal control, to name 2, so that those are documents one unto themselves and they're less frequently revised. The main component of the CSB that we look at are the people and property type rules and regulations that tend to have a little more input from council on a regular basis, typically because it addresses community needs at a given time and a place. So those would be more frequently visited, whereas animal control and traffic enforcement are typically pretty standard. They are bylaws that are covered in most municipalities that are very much the same. And so they don't take as much time and effort to look through unless you had some specific detail. So what you see in front of you is that consolidation as listed. We did make some minor reviews, such as edits to definitions, obviously some grammatical type changes. And what the big piece that we looked at changing in here was that we wanted to make sure that we did remove a couple of pieces of information or language that were contradictory to provincial legislation. And so the example is that if we list something in our bylaw that is outside of what provincial legislation dictates, we are not allowed to supersede provincial legislation, and so therefore it's unenforceable. And the example that I'd give is that the one area that we did modify was when we started talking about e-bikes or powered bicycles and e-scooters. The last revision that was made, there was language added about the use of e-scooters in town limits. And in the provincial legislation, an e-scooter in any way, shape, or form is considered a prohibited vehicle, and it is not allowed on public roadways. The only exception that can be made is if there is a specific bylaw that is passed in a municipality to allow it, and it also has to be granted provincial authorization. And where that applies is in the big cities that are offering those rental e-scooters that you can see sitting on sidewalks or whatever, that you put a credit card in and ride that scooter around, such as Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer. That would be the example of where that's allowed. So we are not granted that authority in Olds, and so we needed to make sure that that language was removed because we were essentially operating outside of that legislation. With good intention, we were trying to address some situations previously where it was brought up, but we wanted to make sure that we were crystal clear and we stayed in the lane that we were supposed to. Otherwise, the one thing that we did look at including, or we did include in this revision, was a standard rates and penalty schedule, which we found in the previous bylaw that there were some provisions within that did not have a specified penalty and therefore become unenforceable to us. So we've put in a standardized penalty for all aspects of the bylaw unless listed otherwise, which is the catch-all. So now every single penalty or every item in the bylaw does have a specific penalty attached to it, and for offenses that would be, considered a higher higher severity, thank you, there are greater penalties than the basic level. And in doing that, we also revised the penalties to be a little more in line with each other so that we didn't see wide fluctuations where, again, just a random example that, perhaps a littering penalty was not, very small in nature, whereas not shoveling your sidewalk, it was high. We wanted to make sure that all of these had a very basic standardized rate, and then there is the stepped approach where repeated offenses elevate gradually so that, again, continued noncompliance is dealt with in a manner that we have that ability. As far as the background, otherwise, as far as the material and content within the bylaw, we did spend a substantial amount of time reviewing and looking at other communities' CSBs, and most of the language and the items that are contained within ours are very similar and standardized, so it's a good thing that we're not doing things well outside the box. There are some specific areas that we will propose to modify or potentially remove completely in future revisions, but right now we're very confident that by standardizing and combining or consolidating all of these into one is the first step to making this better for the public and for administration to manage. So with that, I'll leave it for questions.
Okay, and I guess there's a couple ways we could perhaps proceed. Pages 40 to 54, I think, give or take, are generally fairly administrative and generic and general in nature. A few whereas clauses and some definitions. Unless people have some comments specific to those pages 40 to 54, I would suggest one option would be to begin on page 54 and go through page by page. I think it would be about 20 pages potentially to go through of the actual bylaw and its composition, and have council provide some input and guidance to the acting CEO and to the director, and for a second iteration through the process. If people agree. Okay. Oh, Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I'm not sure if we really want to go through every single thing line by line, page by page. I think we should probably just talk about generalities today as it's being presented for the first time, and give a little bit of direction as to what we think maybe we should be looking at. But my whole feeling is that this is really a service level item. I think that a lot of the things we need to look at is do we really want to have our fingers in every single pie that we have? We can't be all things to everyone, as Councillor Blatz has mentioned on numerous occasions, and I think maybe we should just give a sort of a general feeling as to maybe things that could be in it and shouldn't be in it, or, I mean, if I may proceed, I don't know if you want to hear from me, but I mean, when I went through this, I have a bunch of individual things, and if we start going through every single thing like this, we could be here for hours. When I think maybe a day should actually be set aside to actually go through it on a line-by-line basis. But to me, there's a couple of, I know that Director Justin, I can't
Actually, Councillor
totally
Ryan, before you do that,
Go ahead.
I'll go to Mayor Dahl.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just my feeling.
I'm not married to any particular avenue process. Again, keeping in mind that this is going to be an iterative process over many sessions. So, yeah, I'm certainly not married to a and I'm not advocating for a line-by-line review now. Ultimately, I want to be able to give administration some kind of guidance or enough guidance to at least work something through. But first, we'll go to Mayor Dahl, and then we'll open it up and certainly come back to you, Councillor Ryan.
I concur with Councillor Ryan. This will be line by line when we conduct our service levels in the very near future. But also a reminder that the discussion on Monday, when it comes back to a regular, is it on Monday? Or whenever it comes? Okay, well, if it comes back to, I should not have said that because I have not seen the agenda at this point, but it will be coming back to introduce the amendments and start the discussion, and I concur with Councillor Ryan.
Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and I also concur. I mean, I've got a lot of generalities here that I wanted to discuss, but I believe this is a service level discussion, and I also believe that this is a living document, as Director Andrew has stated. And I mean, I'm very pleased to hear about breaking out some of the sections of it, such as traffic enforcement and animal control. I think those are important. And I believe that those are the discussions we should have at that point in time. Thank you.
No, appreciate the feedback and comments. Director Andrew.
And again, thank you. I just want to reiterate again that inside this CSB as it stands, there are no new bylaws that are being proposed. It was essentially taking what is in place already, consolidating. The only two items that we removed were mentioned, which was the mention of e-scooters, which again was removing contradictory language that went outside of our scope. And there was one motion or mention of a traffic item, which was vehicles parked greater than 72 hours on a public roadway. And the reason that that was removed was that it was creating more problems with enforcement, because essentially there's a lot of people in town that would park greater than 72 hours. And it doesn't mean that we don't have other tools at our disposal to deal with that situation when it's out of compliance. But as a whole, we were running into situations where people are complaining that somebody's parked greater than 72 hours, which doesn't constitute, any kind of an action, or does not really require an action for us. And again, that's something that we're working on further to remedy, and can be discussed at a service level, because it definitely takes a lot of time. So those are the only two removals that's there. And, yeah.
Your Director Andrew and Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I'd like to thank Director Andrew and his team for putting this together. And I agree that there's some generalities that are in here, but also I think we have to take into consideration giving our municipal bylaw officers tools to work within the situations that they encounter. And so, I do believe that there's a lot of detail that's in here that maybe we believe that is not pertinent to be in here, but I think we need to give direction so that our municipal bylaw officer has tools to work with. And so I also agree with Councillor Ryan in that this is such a in-depth and it has so much information in this that maybe we should sit down and have a special meeting that we can go through this bylaw and just really get a good handle on what it's saying, because there is some things in here that I kind of had to read over 2 or 3 times for interpretation as well. And so it'd be nice to see what everybody else is thinking as well. So again, that's my comment on this, so thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Daly. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to reiterate what I think most of the council has said here today. I would rather see a committee meeting, an ad hoc committee meeting, where we're sitting down as a council, as a whole, going over this as a bylaw, line by line, to have that sort of discussion. Then present that into a formal council meeting later on that we can all agree on, rather than having the debate in public forum over and over again on these little minutia issues. I would rather see a committee struck of the whole, where we could sit down for even a one-day event with staff that can explain to us our queries. We could have some more time to prepare and to present our opinions on each particular aspect, how that's going to relate to service level moving forward and all that stuff. It's too complicated of a bylaw. It's not a one-page bylaw like most of our bylaws. It's a very hefty bylaw here that encompasses a lot of really touchy subjects for the community. It needs to have more of our time than we can present in a meeting like today.
Thanks for that, Councillor Ryan.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I agree with what's being said around the table. I do want to thank Director Andrew and also our Sergeant. Sorry, I'm not sure what the term is for Mr. Wright, but Sergeant Wright, for any kind of input that was done on this. It's certainly, you may have only removed a couple of items, but seeing it all together for the first time, I mean, in the last term of council, we've only dealt with bits and pieces of it. We dealt with the vicious dogs, we dealt with the chickens, and we dealt with, but not all, the entire document. So it's nice to see it. I do think that there's a couple of contradictory items still to deal with. There's certainly a couple of items that I noticed that were actually under Animal Protection Act, so I don't know why we would have it in our bylaw. And certainly a couple of things that I felt was just totally unenforceable. So, I mean, all of these details, we can have a discussion at a special meeting, and certainly I'm sure that other members of council have gone through this and felt the same way about other items. So that's my feeling. I'd like to see a meeting called and go through it, and then have a presentation in council at a later date.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Mayor Dahl?
Thank you very much. We've had very good thoughts around the table to this point, and I'd just like to thank Director Andrews for actually starting the discussion here today with us and sharing the information that we're going to require to go through again at a time where we have time to actually do a good dialogue with every section of this community standards bylaw.
Yeah, no, thanks all for your contributions, and certainly to the folks on the front line that have taken it to this level with more work yet to come. And yeah, I have no qualms and disagreement with setting aside a separate date. There's, as we've all said, a lot of substance within this document, and once you exclude the preamble and the appendices, there's about 25 pages of content. So certainly lots there, and I can text my wife and tell her to thaw a few more hot dogs and another can of beans, and I'll be home for supper tonight, because I didn't think I'd be home till like 9 or 10 now. So, Director Andrew.
Thank you, Council. So, and there's a couple of big pieces. So we have revised in this consolidation. We have narrowed this document down from 81 to 49 pages, which is huge. The other thing is that, we do have to make sure in some of the language, and I know that this always does create concern or question because of how it reads. This was all reviewed by legal, and so there's a lot of this that if you change one word, even though it may sound more appropriate, it then actually can nullify the enforcement of it. So I certainly am not an expert at any of it, but we're certainly open to having the discussion, and it may not change, but we can certainly find answers to it. And the one thing I do know is that it is a large document, and it has a lot of obscure things, and we talk about it saying, oh, well, do we really need to put down a bylaw about enforcement of spitting in a public place? The reality is are we looking for that every day in enforcement? No, absolutely not. But when we have the rules of the community that are established, that's the tool that allows enforcement officers to take action when a very small percentage of the community takes exception to the rules and creates a problem for us that we have to deal with. And the one thing that we land on is that when we find these situations that have come up and then we don't have the tool to act on it swiftly, we can't come to council immediately and say we need an emergency revision to the CSB because we have to be able to give somebody a ticket for throwing apples at a car because we didn't have that before. So that is the whole roadmap to this, is that we want to have a reasonable document that gives us the tools. Hopefully we never use it, or we use it very rarely, but it is robust enough, and it also is relevant, because there are a lot of things that I know the legislative clerk has done a tremendous amount of work in bylaw review, and if we don't address the old ones that are on the books, it's laughable, but there's municipalities out there. One time I heard one that, if you were let out of jail, you had to be given a horse and a gun, and if you've never repealed that bylaw, it would be ridiculous that we would be under that premise. But lo and behold, somebody will find that document somewhere, and hopefully that never happens to us. But, cleaning this stuff up is a huge, huge task. And so having, dedicated people such as our legislative clerk that's done the majority of the work on checking this version and the previous, it certainly makes this job a lot easier. So we look forward to revising and bringing forward some really clear, small documents. So emphasis on small.
Okay, thanks for that. Are there any further comments or questions before I call for a motion to accept and direct administration to bring this back? Seeing none, can I ask, sorry, Councillor Cummings?
Sorry, before we go ahead and just do that motion, I did mention in the last statement that I made that I would prefer to see this brought back as an ad hoc committee of the whole, rather than having these discussions at a council meeting, simply because of the length of the material and the difficulty in compressing that into a formal council meeting, so that we can bring it back at a council meeting later. I understand the great work that administration has done in this bylaw, but this bylaw has tremendous political ramifications for our community as well, and that's our input in how the bylaw is created and put out. So I would rather put a motion forward to instruct administration to come back with a request for a decision to create an ad hoc committee of the whole. I understand that we're in a PMP meeting, absolutely. So I'm going to finish what I said. I'm not asking us to make a motion to create an ad hoc committee. I'm asking administration to come back with that request for a decision at our next meeting, which I believe is something that we can do in a PMP meeting. Correct me if I'm mistaken, Legislative Clerk.
You can direct the CAO, yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to finish what I was reading there, and that's going to be the motion I'm going to put on the floor here. I'm going to move that to instruct administration through the CAO to prepare a request for decision for presentation at our next council meeting to create an ad hoc committee of the whole to review the community standards bylaw.
And just to clarify, when you say of the whole, the committee would be all of council,
Yes.
but not in a formal council meeting.
That's what
Yeah. Yeah. I will ask for a vote on that motion. All in favor? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I just wanted to clarify, maybe perhaps through you to the legislative clerk or through you to the acting CAO, whether or not we actually need to do an ad hoc committee, or can we just not call a special meeting of council?
Thank you. Either is correct. Either is correct. I guess my thinking, sorry, this might be too close. My suggestion, my thought was, I feel that council might have that input and it would be better suited when we bring back the broken out CSBs that we want to bring, like traffic, animal, persons, public places, spaces, and special events. I'd rather have your input on those four than stuff that's already been approved by the lawyers, right? Because these 6 bylaws that we put together have already been approved by the lawyers, and they're on the board, and they're on the books. So we've amalgamated them into one document for ease, and I totally want, and we totally want council's input going forward when we break them down, because the look that we're bringing back to you in the new documents is totally different, and it's totally got different verbiage, and a lot of the information that is in here isn't even coming forward in the same verbiage. So are we wasting our time to review this document that we're already potentially looking to review this year and break it down into 4 more documents? So I feel like, yes, I want you guys to be there, and I want to bring those documents back to every council Policies and Priorities Committee, because this is the meeting for you guys to discuss this, right? The service level review, 100%, goes along with the enforcement piece, but hopefully we will have come to an agreement on what you guys want in that bylaw, so when you have the review, then you can make that review or those levels happen. I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but I feel that council's input would be better served on a new document than an already existing, approved by the legal document.
Just to respond to that, this document that's in front of us right now, I do see problems with it. So what do you suggest we do with that? Because, I'm sure that the lawyers did it, but I'm just saying, for example, I can give you an example if you'd like. We just talked about the cemetery bylaw, and we had, in that cemetery bylaw, we allow people to bring in pets into the cemetery. In this bylaw, we say no pets in the cemetery. So that's a contradiction. We either do it or we don't. So regardless of whether or not the lawyers have looked at it, that's a piece that stuck out in my mind, as well as there's some things that I think need to be cleaned up a little bit within this section. I understand we want to have direction to our bylaw people as to enforcement, which is fine. But again, I say that there's one area in particular that's covered under the Animal Protection Act. Why do we have to cover it within our bylaw for the town? I don't know if there might be a reason, but at this point, I don't know. So I do think that there is, if we're going to look at this document, at any of the documents, we should be looking at all of them as opposed to just looking at piecemeal, because that's how it's been done in the past, piecemeal, and we need to go through the whole thing. Do you see where I'm coming from, Ms. McKinnon?
The piecemeal is why 7 documents were put together in this one, definitely. And if we miss the one thing on cemetery, that would be a point that we would love for you guys to catch and tell us, because we can absolutely amend that. That doesn't change any of the legal context whatsoever. And we also have the right to say, in one bylaw, no, but then in another bylaw, we have the right to say, yes, you can, because that person is in the cemetery, but we would rather have a clearer picture that both say the same thing. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So with that, are we saying we're fine with the amendment that we have on the floor from Councillor Cummings? Sorry, the motion, yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. In your motion, you said to bring it back to the next council meeting?
Sorry, to bring the request for decision back to the next council meeting. So administration will present us a request for decision to create the committee at the next council meeting.
Okay, understandable.
Director Andrew.
I think Councillor Cummings' motion does fit the purpose and the intent, is that request would come back, that we will look at the CSB as a whole and its individual components. So all of those items will be addressed, and in part of that working group is that we will actually break those apart so that council will have absolute input on each one of those pieces. So it's all going to be addressed, and we will completely dissect it, and we will separate it into smaller chunks, and I think we'll have a great end result for sure.
Great, and I'm already on the edge of my seat looking forward to that meeting. So with that, I will put it to a vote. All in favor of the motion we have from Councillor Cummings? Carried unanimously. I believe we're good with that. Thank you all. And as we wind things down then, item 7 on our agenda, okay. Right. Sorry.
So I think the legislative clerk clarified that for us just now.
So we're good. Yep. Okay. All right. Item 7, I don't believe we have any new business. Acting CEO, is there anything to report?
No, there is no CAO report today.
Yep. Okay. So at 2:42, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Daly.
I move that we adjourn at 2:42.
All in favor? Thank you, folks. Have a great rest of the day.